All right, Amy and Jake. What did you come away with from that conversation?
So Amy doesn't necessarily have a trigger word, it's more of a trigger act.
Mm-hmm.
It's when people are essentially becoming yes people or not actually voicing their concerns and then work on it through the background.
Yeah.
Um, because that's a attack on her value of integrity and honesty from that aspect. So those are important to her, and when she's being treated this way, that really affects her from that standpoint. And so we discussed that to reframe it or to address it would be watch the body language move through there and then use the CEO tool to actually call it out, get the elephant out of the room, and then go from there.
Yay. Good choice. That CEO tool, Amy, I mean, it's a friend of yours. It's going to be a
Uh,
friend through a lot of scenarios.
It's my best friend.
Yeah.
I should name my dog CEO.
Oh, awesome. So Amy, how about for Jake?
So Jacob's pet peeve is when people are making decisions to do something and are not fully aware of what that decision does to other areas of the business. It may be a positive effect on that area,
Mm-hmm.
but it has a negative ripple effect into other things.
Yeah.
Essentially, the trigger is, I'm doing this, right? Dismissive, not caring about anybody other thoughts or effects on people. And one of the ways we decided would be best to address it is, I understand that's important to you, right? And finding the value in what they are implying or want to do. However, have you thought of what this might affect in X, Y, and Z area?
Yeah.
And with that probing question, make them think to, oh, hold, I didn't think about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Jake, when I think about your situation, it could be a question, it could be a statement. And that, instead of, I mean, it depends on your audience and where they're at, but it could be, let's think through this for just a moment. It's even taking them through the scenario, to help reframe what's going on instead of, hey, if you ask a question, then you could open it up for more dismissiveness. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, we thought about that, whatever. Right? So it'd be more of a statement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Patty?
So I was with Ben and Rupa. Just a little funny. I think this is great. Rupa had never heard the word pet peeve, so that was fun. Just thinking how do you describe that? So what Rupa described as the pet peeve was that being left in the hot seat. When can you have this done? And as kind of a poke on you in front of everyone, and asking you potentially to set an expectation on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what's the answer to that?
We suggested, or we gathered rather, that what's important and what Rupa values is clear expectations and guidelines versus being put on the spot, having some guidance to work with. So a possible reframe could be something along the lines of, what do you feel is a reasonable timeline? Once I understand that,
Mm-hmm.
I will be able to more accurately answer that question.
Yeah.
So it kind of buys you time, and it also forces them to give you a little bit more, and then you can kind of determine together. Rupa's made a good suggestion. Maybe they just don't have a true understanding or feel for the time required to complete a task, and they're trying to back you into a corner. So it gives you an opportunity to outline, the time commitment that you feel it will take, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of get that upfront contract with them, to agree on a reasonable timeline by the end of that conversation.
Okay. That sounds good. All right. And then Ben,
we kind of use my example from the chat, and that is somebody's just suggesting that doesn't make sense without following it up with any context.
Yeah, so you can't throat punch them. What's the next option?
Right. So I'll let Patty or Rupa chime in, but the expectation, the value that my value and most people in the room is understanding why, and not just a closed-ended statement. Needing and understanding reason for disagreement or lack of understanding. So value collaboration and open discussion versus a closed off negative tonality.
Mhm.
So I'm forgetting what the reframe we determined was. I think Patty had a good one. One of you had a good one.
Well, I think what we talked about was adding the value of facts or data to an opinion. It doesn't make sense is an opinion. So let's base that on some data or facts that show us this isn't our best path forward. And then I said to Ben, what happens sometimes in that setting is it's kind of painful to watch, right, in a meeting, because that person's just shutting down, or whosever idea it was feels completely unvalued. So
Mhm.
as a leader, I suggested to Ben, one of the things you could do is bring those people back in who some are, probably very uncomfortable then at the table, and just ask them, if they have facts or data that help drive a decision making that would lead to the decision that makes the most sense.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be the way that you could frame that up is saying something like, that's a really good start. That's a really good start. And let's figure out what else we need to know in order to make an informed decision. So that way you're not saying, well, that's dumb. You haven't even thought about all of the data or the facts that go into that. It's really
Right.
just letting them know that sounds like you put some thought into this. So that's a really good start. Let's also look at some facts that we need to consider before we move into a decision, and we can do that together.
Yeah, and I like, and I tried to do this once and failed miserably. But in looking conversation, what I wanted to say was speaking up. I understand that to you this may not make sense. Not make sense. Is there one piece of this I can maybe reemphasize or focus on to help us reach a conclusion? So kind of soften it a little bit and then open it up, welcome that person to sharing some more information that would help the group determine where the gap might be.
You cut out a little bit at the front, but I think I get what you're saying, that, when that statement, that really grates at you, like, that doesn't make sense. It's like saying, it's almost insulting to you. Like,
Mhm.
do you think I'm not getting it? I'm not smart enough to get it? That's how you feel. But one thing I want to say about that, Ben, to help you to just be more confident, is usually when people say things like that, it's a reflection of the insecurity that's going on inside of them. It really has nothing to do with you. So that's something that you've got to get in your mind. But I love where you're going with the thinking, in responding to that and reframing that. Okay, Rupa, what did you hear?
I'm not sure whether Patty got hers to express.
Well, that's right. We ran out of time before I gave an example of what was a pet peeve for me.
Yeah.
But we had a great conversation between the three of us.
Okay, very good. So it's 3:51, and I really, really want to get to this next exercise, because this is where we put a lot of things together. All right. And you all remember the 4 strategies that we face with every decision. You know, whenever we're in a difficult situation, you can be in a meeting, you can be in a presentation. This just can be, I mean, it can be something outside of the meeting room or the decision-making process. But basically, we've got these 4 strategies that we've learned, and it's, you got to decide when you're going to go to war. You've got to decide, are you going to be more diplomatic about the situation? Are you going to hold your position, or are you going to retreat and rethink your strategy? So I want to bring that into what we're doing, and I'm going to give you an assignment, but I do want to just throw out some tips for you in terms of breaking standoffs and the tension in the room. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but I think that these are the things that I know that I've used in some of the most difficult circumstances ever. You know, I think I shared with you all that I was in Iraq for 3 years. And when I first went to Iraq, I was one of 16 females. And I'm going to tell you that I got fierce and ugly opposition, you know, being a woman. And I mean, I got lit up. I'm going to tell you, I got lit up. Everything that I've learned about executive presence, I learned there. But what I've learned about the human condition and about people is that they tend to soften when you start to personalize. Now, I'm not talking about you taking everything personal. I'm talking about you personalizing the conversation with them by something as simple as just calling their name. Patty, Jake, Amy, Rupa, Ben, you know, just using a person's name and talking with them, appreciating, even using the word, hey, I appreciate that. And I'm not talking about like, I appreciate that, you know, not the smart, everything's got to align, but it's really appreciating that they've asked a question or they've brought up a point. And then recognizing them. So one of the things that sets other people off is that they feel like sometimes when what we're saying, it might invalidate them, or it's not recognizing what's important to them. So sometimes it's just something as simple as say, hey, I recognize that this has been your baby and it has been so important to you. Just saying that out loud can make a big difference for someone. And then using the art of questions. It can be close-ended questions that are yes or no. You want them to say yes. You want to get them to yes because it's psychological agreement. Could be a hypothetical question. This is a great tool that really breaks standoffs. So like if somebody says, I can't do that, you know, I can't do that. A hypothetical question to break that standoff would be, let's pretend for a second that you could. Let's pretend there weren't any obstacles. What would you do then? So you see, you're moving them past that obstacle, but what if you could? And then, you know, they're going to answer. And then that's normally how breakthroughs happen, is just by doing that hypothetical as an intervention. And then reflective questions are very similar to listening coach. So am I hearing you correctly that what you value is blah, blah, blah? So that's just a reflective question or a leading question. And a leading question is one that says, so you wouldn't want to go against our safety protocol and not wear a mask, would you? So you see, I just led them right in to, well, of course I don't want to do that. So these are just some very nifty little ways of influencing the situation. So here's what I want you to do. We're going to run a little bit over, but I think it's going to be worth it for you. I want you to take you can take your scenario that you discussed, or if you want to break into a new one, you can pick one that's off of the list in your workbook, totally up to you. But I want you to walk through your scenario in the 4 strategies: war, diplomacy, holding your position, and rethinking your strategy. So I want you to run that scenario through that. I want you to come to the conclusion of which one is really the best for what you're facing. The other piece is, what challenges do you need to prepare for? So earlier we talked about, before you even walk into a situation, what do you know you're going to be challenged with? That was one of the first things I had you all do when we came back. And then what are your top tools that you are going to use, or would you use in this situation? So this is the whole strategy. This is everything for your situation. These are the questions you need to ask. This is the process that you need to walk through before you even walk into a room or get on a Zoom call when you're trying to influence, okay? So I'm gonna put you in a room. I'm gonna give you 10 minutes. You probably won't get all the way through, but I would like for you to at least pick, one of you to walk through your situation together, and so that you understand how this works, and then we'll come back very quickly in 10 minutes, okay? Let's see, I had somebody, okay. All right, here we go. All right, Jake and Amy, so how did your conversation go?
It went good. So we actually did two.
Okay,
We did number 13, which was the boss ridiculing you in front of your employee, saying he's here to kick your butt.
mhm,
So we thought the diplomacy piece, given the fact that he is your boss,
okay,
was the best way to go. But to also, recognize his concerns and offer the positive that has been completed, and the potential of needing to rethink the strategy on the pieces that he is disappointed with.
mhm,
So to come back together, to be on one-on-one again.
okay. And so what are some challenges that you need to prepare for in that situation when you come back?
The continued opposition and what he's going to still probably hold his ground on, that he's not happy with.
Mhm,
But we need to understand that, and during that, first conversation, the diplomacy piece of it is really kind of listening coach, understanding what his concerns are,
mhm.
and asking the probing questions of what really he's upset with.
Mhm. Yeah, so you could also use some reframing there.
Yep.
To reframe the negativity that he's pushing towards you. I mean, it could be, so what I'm hearing from you is you're really looking for a super high standard of performance, and, just being general about this, and so we need to work on what that looks like. Is that what I'm hearing you say? I mean, so it's reframing his negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Jake, you're on mute.
Where we're trying to call out what the differences are in expectations. So the elephant in the room at that point of time is, we thought we were doing A, you had a thought process of B. Where was that disconnect occurring, and then how can we fix that going forward from that standpoint?
Okay, I missed the first half of what you said.
Just the CEO tool, and trying to call out where this difference of priorities is coming from that aspect, because obviously you don't understand what the priorities are, and they haven't been communicated well.
Right,
You're going down one path and they're coming back and
right.
saying you're not doing anything right.
Yeah, CEO tool is an excellent tool to use in that situation. Okay, so Patty, Ben, and Rupa, who wants to speak for your group?
I would go ahead.
Okay,
I will make it very short. So for Ben, for considering his business need and interacting with his people, so he was saying that he leans more towards diplomacy and
Mhm.
also holds on to the position. So in between, depending on the situation, so he goes more towards diplomacy and then hold position. Patty was mentioning about with her kids, so she has to hold the position most of the time. So that's what her strategy majority of the time. Uh, I gave an example recently. I had again at work that I had to go use the strategy war in order to uh, disqualify one of the rooms. So I had to really hold strong on that because I had the supporting facts and the documents. So I
yeah,
gave the example of the war.
yeah. Yeah, and if we remember these strategies, it's a great way to frame up what you're about to walk into, and how important is this conversation? So what constitutes war is, number one, are your values being stepped on and it's blatant? Number two, is it something that you have definitive proof of something, and it could be a matter of integrity? I mean, it could have a disastrous or detrimental result if you just be quiet, and you don't speak up. So there are some things that constitute war, but even so, diplomacy is what most people like to go to. I mean, and it is pleasant. It doesn't always get you what you want, but being diplomatic is really about playing nice in politics. If you think about what politics really means, we have a negative connotation of it, but it really comes from the word polite. It's about being polite. The problem is that people get passive aggressive behind that politeness, and that's really what people are referring to when we're talking about politics. So diplomacy is really, just keeping the conversation above board, and holding your position is more about, you've had a leader who has said, I've made my final decision. That leader has final say over everything, no matter what. And you're saying, okay, well, you're going to go this direction, but here's my position, and I just want to state it for the record. I was in this situation when I worked for Northrop Grumman. We had an HR leader, an executive leader, who was discriminating against a colleague of mine who was a Black male. And it was very obvious that this was going on. And it was a situation where they made a decision that was, in my opinion, it was adverse to this person. And when they finally said, well, this is my decision, I said, okay, so for the record, this is my position, and here's why. And I needed to say that because I didn't want to be complicit with that. So sometimes it may not seem to matter in the moment, it may matter down the line, but you're holding that position. And then retreating is, sometimes this can be really, sometimes you retreat because you're scared. Okay, yeah, we'll do whatever. But if you're retreating, it really should be because you realize that maybe you had an error in your data, or maybe you didn't have all the facts and you need to go back and relook at that. So just as a refresher on those strategies. All right, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and we're going to log off and log back on at 5 till 5. I have to be off of my line at 5:55 because back in Indianapolis, the VIP Center is having a women's circle, and it turns out that my Zoom account is associated with our live streaming. So they can't live stream while I'm on this Zoom line. So we're going to have to end at 5:55. So if you can be on at 4:55. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through your presentations. I want you to be prepared to walk through it. You're going to have 10 minutes. I'll give you some quick feedback on it. And what will happen tonight is we'll record these. I will put them on the Thinkific drive. I do encourage you to go back and watch them after we get them on the drive tonight. And then we'll do final presentations tomorrow. So Amy, I know that you have concerns, and here's my thought. I want you to make the presentation your own. And I do know that, you know, with Leidos, I recognize that there's some complexities there, but leaders like Paul, they have seen and they have actually done this method when I worked with them in Executive Presence Boot Camp. So they're familiar with it. But what I'm asking you to do and asking everybody to do is just to make sure, see if there are some usable parts that you could use to enhance the presentation that you have. Okay, so don't.
So I guess I have a question. Are you finished?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm trying to understand what the stance of the presentation is. Is it answering those 5 questions to really say what we got out of this, or is it really geared towards a business problem? Because the only thing that and I think this got my concern relieved as I worked through it. It's really just the score scenario that is work related. The rest of it is really about the experience. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before you came into the program, you were functioning a certain way in business, and you know, you can definitely articulate some of your business challenges. You're absolutely welcome to do that. We just want to tie it into the experience.
Yeah, so I just generalized, and you had a lot of good materials that I actually used that really meant something to me regarding the before and after and what the goals of the program were.
Mhm.
So I just aligned it that way and generalized more. But if you want more intimacy in it, you know, just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll do some feedback when we come back together at 4:55. Does anybody else have any questions about the presentation? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and log off for now, and I will see you back at 4:55, okay? Okay.